Welcome to the webinar on dissertation research tips and strategies. My name is Faye Callista, and I'm the Instruction and Student Engagement Librarian here at the Chicago School. Welcome, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great night. All right, so a couple things before we begin. If you have any questions at any point during the webinar, please either raise your hand or type your question. Right now, everyone is muted, so I can't hear you, but if you raise your hand, I can unmute you, and then you can ask your question using, whatever device you have, whether it's a phone or a microphone on your computer or headset. I'll definitely leave plenty of time at the end for questions as well. So if you'd just rather hold your questions until then, that's totally fine. I am recording the webinar, so it will become available to you via email about 24 hours or so after the webinar concludes. I also attached a PowerPoint file if you'd like to see a copy or to download a copy. You can find it under the handouts. All right. Any questions before we get started? I just wanted to make sure too that everyone can hear me. And if you can't hear me, or if the sound quality is not very good, just let me know, okay? I can stop at any point during the webinar too if you can't hear me. All right, let's get started. So I just thought I'd cover what we're going to discuss today during the webinar. We're going to review the components of an effective literature review. I find it really helpful before we dive into the library stuff to kind of talk about what makes an effective literature review, because that also kind of influences what we're looking for as we're searching through the library and through other resources. We'll go through the steps of researching for your dissertation, or if you're doing a prospectus. We'll also talk about how do you know when you're done? That's a question that I get really often from students. We'll also look at tools you could use to organize your search, and then finally, how to get help. Okay, so what is a literature review? In a nutshell, it's really just a comprehensive and up-to-date overview of the topic that you're studying. So you're looking at the principal research in that subject area. The review basically helps form the intellectual framework for your study. So it doesn't need to be exhaustive. Some people think that, they need to sort of list all of the different sort of research articles and so forth that are relevant to their topic, but really that's not the objective. More importantly, it should contain the most pertinent studies and the most important past and current research and practices in the field. So, we'll talk a little bit too as we go through the webinar and through, sort of searching in the library. How do you know a study is pertinent or important, right? How do we find the most current research? So we'll definitely take a look at that. All right. So an effective literature review should not just sort of list the research, right? It should analyze and synthesize what you're finding, right? And it should meet the following requirements. So it should compare and contrast different views on an issue. There might be areas where there's a disagreement, right? Different studies came to different conclusions, or they might be in disagreement on a topic. You may want to also criticize aspects of methodology. So maybe there was a study that was done in your area, but it was very small, maybe a small sample, or maybe just one particular area. So you want to kind of maybe expand on that. You definitely want to highlight exemplary studies. So those are studies, again, those sort of pertinent or most important studies. And we'll also talk about how we identify those. You definitely want to identify any patterns or trends in the literature. So how has it changed over time? Highlight any gaps in or omissions in previous research, or what questions are left unanswered. And then also to show how your study relates to previous studies, and show also how your study may relate to the literature in general, particularly if you're not finding a huge amount of research on your specific topic. You may have to kind of back out a little bit and sort of show how it relates to related or more general sort of topics. And then finally, you want to conclude by summarizing what the literature says. So that's kind of like what an effective literature review is in a nutshell. Okay. So I've identified sort of basic steps in the research process. I mean, different people may have different sort of, or maybe more steps, but I've sort of summarized them into these 5. So, you have your topic, right? And then you identify what those key terms are from your topic. And then you use those key terms, right, to locate literature. And then as you're locating literature, you're also sort of critically evaluating and selecting what literature is most relevant, right, to your topic or to your literature review. And then it's a matter of also organizing your literature. So whether you're using a citation manager or some other method. And then finally, sort of like writing, right? So, and I put arrows in between these different steps because I wanted to kind of highlight that this process isn't always linear. It's not like you go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and you're done. No. Oftentimes what happens is you kind of do a preliminary search, right? Kind of identify some preliminary key terms, identify some sort of preliminary literature, see where that leads. Sometimes we then sort of reevaluate even our topic. Sometimes depending on what we find, or we tweak our topic. Maybe we sort of think about what other sort of areas or limiters we want to use, and then we go back and we identify additional key terms and additional literature, and so forth. So it's not a linear process necessarily. I know sometimes people kind of feel like they go in circles, and that happens sometimes. So when that happens, like if you feel like you keep going around and around in circles, there are things that you can do, including reaching out for help from your librarian or from your dissertation chair. And I'll have some stuff later on in the webinar that may help with that as well. All right, any questions so far? Okay, so the first step is to identify those key terms. And I think a lot of students find this somewhat challenging, because there are often multiple ways that you can define a topic. Sometimes our initial keywords don't give us exactly the results that we're looking for, right? I mean, we may do a search and we get frustrated because we're like, wait a second, this isn't what I'm looking for. It could be that you're not using, quite the right combination of keywords, right? So I find it really helpful to start by sort of identifying sort of the key terms, right, from your research question, and then brainstorming any related terms or synonyms. So I've got an example here. So let's say that we were studying, are children who play video games more likely to be violent? And so those key terms or those key concepts, right, are children, video games, and violence. Now, what are some other words that we could use for children, right? We could use child or youth, kids, adolescents even, if maybe we wanted to expand it to a different age group. Video games, same thing. We could do, computer games, gaming, electronic games. And then finally with violence, it could be aggression or antisocial behavior. So again, there's different ways that we can sometimes sort of define a topic, right? There's related terms and synonyms that we can use. Now, the thing is that we don't always know, I mean, even if we sit down and brainstorm keywords, it's not necessarily all going to come to us, right? We may not know maybe all of the related terms. So there's different ways that we could sort of expand that keyword list. One of the ways that we can do that is by using a thesaurus. Thesauri are available in most library databases, and some of them are quite specialized. So for example, PsycInfo, which is a really popular database in psychology, just because it's so comprehensive, you know, it's got a thesaurus included in the database. It's very specific to psychology. And then the thesauruses can really help you see, you know, either synonymous terms, related terms, or maybe hierarchies, such as broader terms or narrower terms. And these can kind of help you make your search more precise or help you kind of build that keyword list. And I can show you what that looks like really quickly by going into PsycInfo. So just a second. I'll show you a thesaurus in action here. So you'll usually find it in the advanced search, and it will usually be at the top. And as I said, most databases have one. You can click on thesaurus. And let's say we were doing a study on resilience of adolescents during COVID-19, something like that. So one of my terms would be resilience. Now I can definitely use resilience as a keyword, but there might be some other concepts that are related to that we could search as well. So let's go ahead and click find. So it looks like we've got this as a subject term here. I can click on this note and that opens up the related terms. So I could definitely search resilience, but I can also maybe add, you know, coping behavior. It's not the same thing, but maybe I'm interested in that sort of aspect, resilience or coping behavior or emotional adjustment or, you know, maybe psychological endurance or, yeah. So you can actually click on, you know, sort of these multiple terms and then click add to search. So now I'm searching not only resilience, but also these related terms. So that's just another technique that you can use to kind of build that keyword list. Okay, so that's using a thesaurus. You can also find key terms or descriptors, that's another term for key terms or keywords, in the articles that you find. So let's say you find at least one or two related articles, right? You think, okay, this works with my topic, it's pretty spot on. Go ahead and look at the indexing details. It's usually, you know, if you click on the abstract or the details, it will show you the abstract, which is also really good to read. You can sort of read the abstract and see if you can pick out any other sort of key terms. If you scroll down, you'll also see some other details like the subject terms associated with that article, as well as the keywords. And that might give you some ideas. Maybe you didn't think of using a particular key term listed under that article or a particular subject. So that can be really helpful. As you do more research and as you read more articles, you may sort of, you know, sort of keep building that keyword list as you find more articles and find more keywords associated with those relevant articles. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Another technique that you can use is to limit your search by subject terms. So again, like this is kind of building that keyword list or that subject term list. I can show you what that looks like. So hold on a second. Let me go back to PsycInfo. We'll go back to that search that we were doing earlier on resilience. And then we can do, let's see here, we'll just put COVID-19. And then we can add adolescents. I usually change this to anywhere except full text. just because in anywhere, that's going to search for those key terms anywhere it appears in the article. But if you change it to anywhere except full text, now it's going to look for those key terms in the abstract or the title or the sort of key terms, keywords, but not the entire article. So you're going to get fewer results, but hopefully they will be more relevant. So let's go ahead and do a search. I'm kind of curious here. I haven't done the search in a while. See how many results we get. Okay, so not a huge number. Hopefully this is kind of what we're looking for. If we get a larger set of results, like let's say that we take out adolescents and we're just looking at resilience in COVID-19, just kind of wanted to show you what this looks like. So now we've got sort of more results. And if you scroll down on the left-hand side, there's lots of different ways that you can limit your search. And one of them is by subject. So if you click on the little arrow, and most databases have this feature, not just like Info, but even other databases like EBSCO, other ProQuest databases as well. So if I click on subject and then click on more, you'll notice that I get a list of subject terms that are basically taking that set of results that I just got and breaking it down by subject. This is really helpful too, I think, to sort of see how a larger subject breaks down. It can also help us kind of see different sort of key terms as well. So, I mean, maybe I just used COVID-19, but maybe SARS-CoV-2 or pandemic could be related terms. Maybe well-being, we were talking about resilience, but well-being is a related term. So we could use resilience or well-being and so forth. So this really, I think, helps. I mean, it can help to narrow down a search, but it can also help you build that keyword list. Does that make sense? I find this really helpful when I do research. I use it a lot. Okay. All right, so back to the slides. Any questions about limiting your search by subject terms or using that to build your keyword list? All right. All right. So once you've built your keyword list, of course, you're going to go out into different areas to actually locate the literature for your review. You'll notice on the library website, we have a search box. It's called OneSearch. It's brand new. For those of you who have attended the Chicago School last semester, this is different. I mean, it's similar in some ways, but it's actually more comprehensive than our old search. It searches across just about all of our library resources, whereas before it searched maybe, I don't know, maybe 50% or so. So it's definitely better, more comprehensive. I think the search results are also much better, and it's got a few other sort of limiters that you can use. But there are some limitations to using OneSearch. It definitely lacks the bells and whistles that you find in databases like PsycInfo or other databases. We just looked at the thesaurus, for example, and that's a database, or that's a feature that you won't find in this OneSearch. There's also specific types of information that you can't find, like data sets or company info or other sort of specialized types of information. And oftentimes, too, we just get a lot of results. So definitely some limitations. I do like to use library databases to do research, even though it's not as sort of comprehensive as using a tool like OneSearch. It's, again, like you can use those subject-specific limiters and bells and whistles, those bells and whistles like thesauri to do a search. And you'll get sort of more subject-specific results. So some of our subject-specific databases are like PsycInfo for psychology, ABI Inform Global or Business Source for anything sort of management or organizational related subjects. You can also look at multidisciplinary databases like Academic Search Ultimate or ProQuest Central. Those are really good. I usually start with a subject-specific database and then move on to multidisciplinary databases. And then I'll also use OneSearch to kind of see if I'm getting the same results or different results. You know, every place that you do a search is going to give you slightly different results, right? All right. You definitely also want to look at dissertations. This is actually like, you know, kind of important, right? You want to see if anyone has written a dissertation on your topic or close to your topic. They can also be a goldmine of information. So even if it's something related, you can definitely look at their references, particularly if it's a newer dissertation. You can look at the research methods that they use, the surveys, or like, you know, instruments that were used in their particular study, and so forth. So really valuable resource. You can find it, you can find the databases under our databases A through Z link right under that sort of search box on the main library page. So after I've done research in the library databases, after I've done some, you know, looking at the dissertations, I'll also look at Google Scholar. I find it really valuable. You know, you'll know that your search was pretty comprehensive if after you've done all of your searching in the library databases, you're finding a lot of the same things also in Google Scholar. But you may also find some different things. So that's why I think it's really valuable to check Google Scholar as well. It just has it uses different algorithms. It'll sort of give you results in a different sort of order, so to speak. You may also want to look at books. I mean, most dissertation or literature reviews, you know, you want to focus on sort of the peer-reviewed scholarly literature, right, or primary sources. But it doesn't mean that you can't reference books or dissertations or other types of information. Sometimes books can provide a really great background to a particular topic. They can maybe provide that theoretical framework. So you can always search books under the OneSearch box on the main library page, and then check mark books and do a search that way. You can even search outside of our collections. I mean, of course, if you just search books, it's going to show you what we have in the library. So just our ebooks, our print books. But if you want to see books outside of our collections, you can do that as well by clicking on Expand Search. Usually you can get any items that you find through interlibrary loan. Right now we don't actually, you can't request entire books. You can request book chapters though. All right. Another tip that I have for you is definitely don't restrict your search to full text. Most databases do have that limiter. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And I would just encourage you not to use that. I mean, you're used to doing that maybe for your papers, and that's great, right? Because you want to see that full text content first. But for a literature review, you really want to see everything. You know, not everything that is published is actually available in the library. You know, there's definitely some publications that are embargoed, you know, for 6 or 18 months that are not available online, or maybe we don't have an online subscription to that particular publication. Again, you can use interlibrary loan services to obtain any articles that you can't find online. So there could be a very important research study that was done, and you don't want to miss that just, you know, if you clicked on the full text. Same thing for the OneSearch. So OneSearch actually searches our full text content. So all of the results that you get is content that's full text in the library. You can see everything by clicking on Expand Your Search though. That's usually going to be at the top of the page after you've done a search. And that way you can see not only the stuff that's available full text in the library, but also stuff that isn't. And again, there's a link usually in those records where you can request that through interlibrary loan. And at the end of the presentation too, if you want me to show you where those links are located, I can do that. All right. As you're locating literature, definitely take advantage of any advanced search features as you need them. So again, there may be subject-specific limiters that I showed you earlier, but there's other there's other limiters that you can use as well. So for example, going back to our PsycInfo page, and every database is going to be a little different. So this was our search earlier. So I mean, here you can actually limit to a particular methodology, you can limit to a particular age group, even language or population or record type. So there's lots of options here. And even you can limit it to a particular test or measure. So see all the articles that used a particular test or measure, or studies that used a test or measure. You can even limit to a location. So just North America or Canada or a particular country. So those are really helpful. I find it really helpful too to combine keywords like related terms. So for example, if we were doing a search on an LGBTQ population, we could definitely use LGBTQ as a keyword and get results, right? But it may not give us all the results, right? Like if we combine keywords by using or, we might be able to expand our search. So it's either LGBTQ or gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender and so forth. I usually put that in parentheses with an or in between. Every database is a little bit different, but this is usually a safe bet. Same thing with COVID-19. You could put COVID-19 as a keyword and get results. Or, you could expand it by using COVID-19 or pandemic or SARS-CoV-2. So you get the idea. Okay. There are other advanced search features that you can use in a search. So for example, earlier we were talking about adolescence, but there's different sort of ways that we can phrase that, right? It's either adolescent or adolescence or adolescence. By using asterisks, it's called truncation. And you use that after the sort of root of the word, then it will search all those sort of permutations. Phrase searching is something that I use very often. So when a database searches for keywords, like if you put more than one, like say social distancing, it's going to search for the word social and it's going to search for the word distancing, but they don't have to appear together, right? So you could get some pretty unrelated articles. But by putting quotation marks around that, now it's going to search for social distancing together, right? So where those two words appear together. Question marks also are helpful if you're looking for, like, let's say, a word that has different, like women or woman, you would put a question mark in between the M and the N, and that way it'll search both of those. I've got a really great page actually that kind of explains all of that pretty well. You can find it on the library webpage. Oops, under, hold on, let me go to the library website so I can show you where that is located. So you can find it under Find Help and then Research Guides. And then we've got a page here under Research and Guide to Searching. And it kind of outlines all of that stuff, like, Boolean searching, which we talked about earlier, and then also these, different sort of advanced search features like phrase searching, truncation, proximity indicators, and so forth. So I just wanted to point that out, that we do have that on the web page, and it can be really helpful. All right. Any questions so far? All right. kind of giving you all my pro tips here. All right. Another technique that you can use as you locate literature is called citation chaining or bibliographic mining. Some people also call it pearl growing or chain searching or citation mining, but whatever, however you want to phrase it, basically it works like this. It's identifying and examining the references or works cited in an article, if it's a backwards reference searching. And I can kind of show you what that looks like too in a minute, but basically you're looking at the references, right? And that helps you kind of learn more about the development of knowledge on a topic, right? So what are they referencing? Study the origins and development of a theory maybe, or a construct or a model of interest. And it's also really helpful to identify experts or institutions or organizations that specialize in that topic of research. So that's backward reference searching. There's also forward citation searching. So looking at the articles that cite the articles that you're looking at. And that really helps to kind of expand your knowledge on a topic by locating follow-up studies. You can also use it to identify any new findings or developments on a topic. And you can also use it to examine or consider other methodologies or analyses used to study a topic. So that's really helpful, and I can show you what that looks like briefly. Keep going back to that PsycInfo page here, but I just wanted to show you. Let's just use pandemic this time. I'm gonna get a pretty wide range of. So here you'll notice that the articles will often just include even a link to the references, but also a link to the cited by. Not for every single item, but for many of them it does. I mean, some of these, like this one was just published last year, so it's not going to have a lot of articles citing it because it's so recent. But it's something that kind of keep in mind. Like this one right here, it's a little older, but it was cited 10 times. But anyway, it's really helpful. And if you find that an article has been cited many, many, many times, that might be an indication that it's something that you want to sort of look at, right? Maybe it had a really big impact on your particular subject area or research area. And that's something that you may want to include in your literature review. Maybe this isn't quite the topic here for maybe remove pandemic, just so I can kind of see. This is way too many, right? Resilience, we've got 80,000 results, definitely need to narrow that down. But just to kind of show you, an example here. So like this one, for example, it was published quite a while ago, but it was, cited 110 times. That might be something to look at. Or like this one, Understanding Family Resilience. It's cited 332 times since, but it's pretty old. So when we were talking earlier about like how do you identify pertinent or important studies, that is one of the ways that you can do that. I often get the question too, kind of while we're on this topic is, how far back do I go when I'm referencing previous research in my particular subject area? And I would say that really depends on your topic, right? If there's been a lot of sort of change in your research area recently, you definitely want to, you always want to include the most recent research. But if there was an important study that was done, let's say, 15 years ago, or even 20 years ago, and people are still referencing it in the most current research, that might be something you may want to include. It just really depends. You have to take a look at it and determine if you want to use that or if it's relevant. So here's another, I kind of made a screenshot of what that looks like in the databases. Not all databases will put the cited by. You'll notice that Google Scholar does that too. So that's another tool that you can use. All right, as you're locating literature, you can also look at review articles. Sometimes if you're lucky, you find one, right, that provides sort of detailed coverage of the literature on your topic. There may not be a review article on your topic, but it's just helpful to look for those, or even a literature review that exists on some aspect of your topic. Sub-databases even enable you to limit your search to literature reviews or review articles, but if it doesn't, you can always use that as a key term, literature review or review as a keyword. A couple other things to consider. So as I mentioned earlier, you definitely want to rely on the most current research, right? So that can be 5 or 10 years, maybe longer, it depends, but definitely more recent than not recent, right? You want to prioritize your search by sort of focusing on those peer-reviewed and scholarly journal articles. But you can always include articles or books or conference papers or dissertations, just as long as that's not like the bulk of what you're referencing, right? You want most of it to be that scholarly or peer-reviewed literature. And definitely rely on primary sources and use those secondary sources more selectively. I often get the question like, well, okay, what is a primary source? What are you talking about? So most of us, since we're in the social sciences, that would mean either the results of an experiment or research study, or could even be statistical data, right? Articles and papers that present original results of research studies. These are considered primary sources. And you can tell that an article is a primary source if you see sections entitled like methods, results, discussion, maybe it has some charts or statistical tables. Definitely read the abstract to get a good sense for what kind of article it is, right? So I have a little screenshot here of a particular article that I found in PsycInfo. And would you consider this a primary source? Yeah, absolutely not. It's a review article, right? It talks about other studies. So definitely not a primary source. Got another screenshot here of a different article, and this one definitely is a primary source, right? Because it's talking about the results of a study. And it does talk about the methods, results, talks about, what conclusions they've come to. So those are the types of articles that you kind of want to focus on. It doesn't mean that you can't include other materials, but it's important that your literature review includes these primary sources. Couple strategies as you sort of critically evaluate and select literature in this sort of next step. Oftentimes you can sort of start from new material and then go to old or general to specific. Sometimes starting with a general topic will provide leads to specific areas within that sort of general topic area, and then sort of help you understand the sort of relationships within that area. You may want to also note the quality of the journal. That's sort of critically evaluating your sources, right? So look at the publisher. Is it a university press, professional society? You kind of want to know what the top journals are in your field and make sure probably that at least some of your sources come from those top journals. I mean, it's not absolutely necessary, but again, the idea is that you're referencing quality research, right? Or as much as possible. You want to look at the output of the author, maybe look at their credentials, educational background or experience. Sometimes when you do research on a topic, you'll find that there are sort of these kind of authorities on a topic, or at least people who have done a lot of research maybe in that particular area. So you may want to take a look at that. Yeah, and as you read and become more informed on a topic, you probably will need to go back and do some more focused research or searches. So it goes back to that kind of idea that the steps are not necessarily linear, right? We kind of go back and forth a little bit as we learn more about our topic. All right, so we've chosen our keywords, we've looked at the different like resources, databases, etc. We've sort of evaluated kind of what we're looking at. We're kind of, close to getting done. How do you know when you're actually done? It's a question I get pretty often. I kind of have this handy research checklist that I think it might be helpful. Sort of go through that really quickly. So I usually ask, okay, so what's, have you looked at all the databases in your subject area or related subject areas? Did you look at the top journals in your field? Did you check Google Scholar? Did you look for dissertations related to your topic or review articles in your subject areas, if they exist, of course? And maybe even conference papers or white literature, even if, like particularly if it's really recent, maybe there wasn't peer-reviewed literature published yet, but they, maybe presented at a conference might be helpful. Did you use different keywords and subject terms? Have you sort of used that citation chaining or bibliographic mining technique to find related articles or items? Have you created an alert for your topic? Oh, we didn't cover that yet. I'll actually do that in a minute. Did you make sure that you didn't check the full text box? And then did you use interlibrary loan services to obtain art items that are not available full text in the library? Take advantage of it. It's a free service through the library, and it's actually pretty quick. Most people get their items within a day or two. Sometimes it takes longer, but it's generally pretty quick. And then also, are you finding new sources when changing your keywords or through citation chaining? And finally, have you consulted with other researchers in your field or your chair? So these are sort of, some of the things that I kind of look for or sort of go through with students where they're not sure if they've sort of gotten everything. Going back to the alert, I find that actually really helpful. Let me actually go into, I'll keep going back into my PsycInfo results here. But if we, let's go back to this COVID-19 one, because that was kind of our original result. We didn't get like a huge number of results, right? And it's still kind of evolving, right? I mean, this is a very new topic. But let's say this was something that we were interested in. You can actually create an alert. You could usually find it in most databases on the right-hand side. You find it right here, create alert. And what that means is if any new articles are added to the database under this topic, you'll automatically get an email. And it gives you the choice of, how often you want those alerts to be sent to your email, and then how long you want those to be sent. So maybe you want it for the next year or just the next 6 months. I find this actually really helpful for dissertation students because really you're not done with your literature review and you're really not done with your dissertation until you actually defend. So if there's some new research that was done, after you've done your literature review, you may want to kind of stick that in there. So those alerts are really helpful. All right. So the next step is to organize your literature, and I don't have a lot of time left. So of course, it's beyond the scope of this presentation to really go into depth on how to use citation managers, but it's just something to be aware of if you don't already have one. So there's different citation managers out there like RefWorks, which the library subscribes to, or EndNote, Zotero, Mendeley. These are all pretty similar. They allow you to collect, organize, and manage sort of a databases of references. And with most citation managers, you can create bibliographies in APA format or other formats. You can even generate in-text citations and bibliographies as you write. Most of them have a plugin that works with your word processor. So it makes that really sort of like a huge time saver, and keeps you really organized. You can also create accounts in the various library databases like ProQuest and EBSCO. I think even OneSearch has a feature too, where you can save articles, you can save your searches, you can organize your research into different folders, manage your alerts, like what we talked about earlier, set your search preferences and so forth. So those are some of the options that you have to organize your literature. We have some help pages as well on the library website if you're interested in learning more about these citation managers. And I've also got a webinar coming up at the end of the month on citation management as well, if you're interested. All right. So the last step, obviously, is to write. We've got lots of great resources, including the Writing Center. They also have webinars on writing a literature review, which are really helpful. I think they may even have some older webinars that have been recorded that you can view. You can always check out different resources in the library as well. We've got some great books on writing dissertations, including that sort of literature review process. So you can check those resources out. You can even just do a keyword search, literature review and writing, or dissertation and writing, and you'll get lots of really great results. Oh, by the way, these were just a few examples of the books that we have in the library. Like these are ebooks. So, all right. Well, and finally, I know this was a lot of information to throw at you. And that's okay if you sort of feel like you're not able to retain all of this information. It's a lot. So help is available if you ever need it. And that could be on any aspect of the research process. So it could be anything from, I don't know what keywords to use in my research, or I've got a dissertation topic, I've done some research, and I'm just not finding what I'm looking for. I'm just not finding any articles. Or maybe I'm finding too many articles and I'm not quite sure how to narrow this down. We can help with all of that. So you can either email us, chat with us. Those are sort of more for like quicker questions. But really, if you want a full-fledged research consultation, I highly recommend that you meet with a librarian. We have online research consultations available. Let me go to our library website so I can show you kind of what that looks like. So again, under Find Help, meet with a librarian. We have all of the time right here is in Central, so you have to kind of make adjustments for that. But if you have no preference for which librarian you want to meet with, it's fine. You just pick the day that you have time and the particular hour, click continue, and then just enter a little bit of information about yourself and your topic, and then you can confirm appointment. Right afterwards, you get a link to Zoom, which we use then to conduct that research consultation. We can record the Zoom meeting if that's helpful. Otherwise, you can set that appointment for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, up to an hour. And I encourage you to use those services. I mean, that's really what we're here for. We're more than happy to help. So, don't hesitate to reach out, even if it's just to confirm, I don't know, that you've done or you've covered everything with your literature review. Or even at the beginning with the keywords, as I said, we're here, we're happy to help. All right, so that's basically everything I wanted to cover today. As I said, I know that was a lot. Does anybody have any questions? Anything maybe you want me to demonstrate in more detail? And again, you can either raise your hand or you can type your question. All right, well, it looks like there are no questions for now. I'll stick around for a few more minutes in case anyone has a question. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending. I hope this was helpful. And as I said, we're here if you need any help. So thank you and have a great night.